Hi everyone, I'm Khushbu Sheikh, and today is our fifth session of Tech Exploration Hub. Today we have here Pritish Acharya. Pritish is a technical account manager at Google, and we are here to listen about his journey and career transition to this TAM role. And I'm looking forward to hear from Pritish on his experiences and some insights that he has to share with the folks here. So with that said, I will let Pratish give a brief introduction about himself before we move on to the questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Khushbu, for arranging this. My name is Pritish. I work with Google as a technical account manager. I have been working in the industry for almost 12 years. I've done my engineering in electronics and communication, and post that have been into the infrastructure domain for quite some time. With Google, I have been almost there for 3 years. Started off as a cloud consultant and then transitioned into the technical account management role. So that's a little bit about myself, and happy to discuss further with you.
Sure, let's go ahead. So my first question to you would be, how did you find out about the STAM role at Google, and what made you feel that this was the right fit?
Right. So for me, it was I'm not an external hire for the TAM role specifically because I was already working with Google as a cloud consultant in a different team, and I was looking for, so as a part of my career progression, I was looking to do something more strategic, something more business focused, something that's more closure and has a long-term relationship with the customer. That is where I found this opportunity for the technical account management role through our internal job postings. Went through the interview process and ended up in the role, right? So, one thing, how I think this or how I decided this role fits me is primarily because of my background. I have been into customer facing role for um, 2 years in Google and almost three and a half years prior to that. And this is something which I like to do. This is something which excites me to talk about architecture, to talk about best practices, operational stability, operational excellence, and those kind of things. And I felt that is essentially what the technical account management role in Google offers. So this could be a good fit for me as my next career progression move.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. So what skills or experiences from your previous role helped you prepare for this role?
Right. So the technical account management role is also a very technical heavy role. It looks at or it rather expects you to help drive customer conversations around best practices, operations, stability of the architecture, and those kind of things. In my previous role, I used to do a lot of architectural discussions, do a lot of implementation, very hands-on when it comes to things like Kubernetes, CI/CD pipelines, and things like that. So that experience did help me bring those technical expertise into the role which are required. And when a customer, when they reach out to someone with a problem statement, they would expect the other person, if not to give a solution immediately, at least to understand what the problem statement is, understand where they're coming from, understand how this piece fits into their larger architecture. And that is where my experience as a cloud consultant, cloud architect comes very handy. So that ability to look at a use case and look at how it fits into the larger architecture of the things, how it fits into what the customer is trying to achieve by implementing that use case. All of those aspects have played a very handy role when it comes to taking up the technical account management role as a position rather.
Got it. Okay. So, like, what do you like? Since you have worked as a cloud consultant, and I know like some folks who work as a cloud consultant at Google. So, what do you think is like the main difference, or like the main difference between a cloud consultant and a TAM role? What do you think the main distinction is? Yeah.
So I think when you're working as a cloud consultant, You are working specifically on projects. You have a use case, you have a problem statement. In some cases, you have architecture already defined. Some cases, you have to define the architecture. But the role more or less entails you solving a single problem statement and then helping the customer go from the problem statement to the solution to the implementation and handing it off to the customer to take care of things on a day-to-day basis. Whereas when it comes to a technical account management role, I think the pivot that happens in that case, while the role still remains technical, the pivot that happens is you're not doing on a problem statement basis anymore. You're more deeply engaged in your customers' day-to-day business. You understand how technology plays a role in their day-to-day business as an enabler, what kind of KPIs, matrices, outcomes they want to drive from technology. And of course, in the broader scheme of technology, where Google Cloud fits in, as a provider, as a platform, what problems we solve. Um, so while in the previous case it's more um, use case driven, in the later case it is more business case driven.
Driven. Okay. So like more of business focused on TAM side, and on the cloud consultant, it's more like technically focused, right? Okay. Sounds
So
good.
that's one way of putting it. Again, we'll be very conscious of the fact that the TAM role
It's still
also is
technical.
a
Yeah.
technical role.
Yeah.
It's not a non-technical role, but
Yeah.
uh, it's more business cases driven. So
Okay.
as a cloud consultant, you come in once the use case is defined, but as a TAM, you come in much earlier in the conversation. You come in even before the use case is defined. You come in where it is just a problem, a business problem statement.
Okay. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Sounds good. Um, Now what does a day in the life of a TAM, like technical account manager at Google, looks like?
So typically, a technical account manager in Google is someone who usually works with um, premium customers of Google. When I say premium, these are the largest, most important, significantly visible customers of Google Cloud, right? So there are, I think, 2 to 3 primary pillars that will come in a day-to-day activity. One is uh, making sure that the customer's architecture is stable, making sure that the lights are turned on and they stay on and they're running the way it is expected to run. now, um, obviously, this is technology, this is hardware, this is infrastructure. Things break sometimes, and there are issues that needs to be resolved. That is where, again, as a time, you step in, you help the customer try to um, resolve the issue, try to figure out what the problem is, work with our cloud support team, the customer engineering team, the customers engineering team, all of those teams to come together and try to resolve the issue. So that's one aspect of what you do, and then there are conversations around FinOps, cost optimization, DevOps, security operations, um, all of these, again, critical pieces of day two operations for any customer. So sometimes even those conversations are there that you need to take care of. The customer is trying to implement something new. They want to understand what's the best way of doing it. They want to understand what kind of impact it might create if they go ahead and implement it. Um, they want to understand what are Google recommended best practices for doing a particular thing. So a lot of those conversations also happen where you provide them guidance, sometimes through documentation, sometimes through demos around how to do it, what's the best way, how can this be done in a smooth way, ensuring there's not much business disruption. So that's one aspect of it. And I think the third aspect is learning, because any technical role entails you to be continuously learning and continuously upskilling. So keeping the customer updated about what's the latest and greatest that's happening around technology, what kind of trainings, workshops, webinars, are being offered by Google for, let's say there's a new product that's being launched, and there's a training, there's a workshop or a webinar. All of those conversations flow through the TAM. So as a TAM, it's your responsibility to keep a tab of all of those things that are happening, and then make sure that your customer is aware of things which are relevant to them. Right. So, for example, there could be 50 trainings happening in a month, but all the 50 may not be relevant to the customer. So, filtering out which one is relevant, which one is not, and then making sure that the right stakeholders are apprised of those kind of opportunities. That's also something that falls under the purview of a day-to-day role of TAM.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for that. So I'm also like a TAM in Twilio, so it kind of sounds very similar to what I do. And I just wanted to like summarize. Is it like for me, I'm like the technical point of contact for my customer, right? Is it the same thing for you as well? Like you're the technical point of contact for anything that the customer has once the customer is
Yeah.
assigned to you,
So
right?
you're the first technical point of contact
Yes.
for your customer. Any
Okay.
question or query that they have, usually they would reach out to you, and then it falls under your responsibilities on or your shoulder to point it and drive it in the right direction, right? Again, like I said, as a technical account manager, you are not expected to solve every single thing, but you're definitely expected to assist the customer in solving it. So sometimes it might mean asking the customer to open a support ticket, or sometimes it might mean probing into uh, more details from the customer around what is the business case, what is the use case, what are they trying to achieve, things like that, and then bringing the right folks onto the conversation to make sure that they are able to achieve what they want to achieve, right? Sometimes it could mean just pointing the customer to the right set of training resources or the right set of documentation that's available to get something done. It could be as simple as a customer is, let's say, trying to implement a new security feature, and they reach out and they want to understand what is the best way of doing it. So it could be as simple as pointing them to 3 or 4 different documentation, saying, hey, these are the documentations around the security feature. This is how you go and implement it. But yes, the role in general, that is what it is. It is all about you being the first touch point for the customer for any technical queries.
Yeah. Yeah. Sound good. Like very well put together, actually. That was a good summary. And going forward, did you face any setbacks during your career transition? Like how did you navigate them?
I okay, I did not face any setback during my career transition from the cloud consultant role to the TAM role, because it's more of an internal transfer, which is within Google. It's very streamlined and it's sorted. I have had a few career setbacks prior to joining Google. I think one of the best examples of that was I was interviewing with a particular company, and this was, I think, 6 to 7 months before my Google interview process started. So I was interviewing with a particular company, went through all the rounds, cleared all the interviews, got a very good feedback from all the interviewers, but then the offer somehow was not rolled out. Um, because of some business decisions, the position went on a hold. It is sometimes it is disheartening. I'll be very honest. I won't take a high ground and say,
Absolutely.
"Oh,
No,
I
there's
was,
no doubt
I was,
about it.
like I said, I won't take a high ground and say, oh, I was superly optimistic that something better is to." No, it wasn't the case. It was disheartening. Uh,
Yeah,
to a certain
it's very
disappointing as
disappointing.
right.
Yes, I can
Um,
relate to you.
but then Google happened, right? And that's when I realized that the universe always has a larger plan for you. There are always bigger things at work, and sometimes.
Moreover, I think you don't lose also anything, right? Like that experience would have definitely helped you somewhere in your interview with Google. So I think we as humans, we get very disappointed, but then it's an experience. I think that's how we should look at it, right?
Right. I always very fondly remember the story that my grandfather told me. There was a king who gave a challenge to his council of ministers, saying, I want you to write me just one sentence, which if I am sad and I look at that sentence, it makes me happy. And if I'm happy and I look at that sentence, it makes me sad. And it has to be the same sentence. And one of the minister wrote a very beautiful sentence that said, "This too shall pass." So I think going back to the same thing, whenever you're in a position where things did not work out the way you planned, I think it's very fundamental to go back and say, "This too shall pass." Um, Good things will pass, bad things will pass. It's all a part of life.
Yeah, nice, nice story. Thank you for that. That's good. Um, and Okay, what did the interview process at Google for the TAM role look like? Any tips for the aspiring TAMs?
Right. So I think I'll speak a little bit about the interview process in Google in general, because like I said, I was an internal transfer. So for me, the interview process, career transition process is slightly different for anyone who's going from one role to another role within Google. But if somebody is trying to come into Google from outside, the process is slightly different. So I'll talk about the outside process, which is more important to the audience, is what I feel. Um, so essentially, usually there would be 3 or 4 rounds for any role. It could be the cloud consultant role or the TAM role or for any customer facing role for that matter. There would be 3 or 4 rounds. The first round usually is a recruiter interaction where they ask very basic questions to understand your profile, understand the kind of work that you have done, see your fitment to the job, what we call the standard recruiter shortlisting. Post recruiter shortlisting, you'll have 2 rounds, which are so the first round is purely technical, where you go in and you try to solve problem statements, try to solve technical questions, how to do things, um, how to troubleshoot, how to implement something, and all of that. So that's one.
So these will be
one.
like generic, or it'll be like specific to Google when you talk about like troubleshooting, solving problems, and all that.
So again, if it all depends on what kind of role you're going for, right? So let's say, for example, you're going for a software engineering role.
Okay.
And the software engineering role, in this particular role, Python is the language that you're going to work on. So you can expect questions on Python, right? So
Right.
you can
Right.
expect, you might get a generic DSA question, but you would be expected to write a Python code out of it, right?
Correct.
So you'd be expected to talk about how you would do it if Python is the language.
Correct.
Similarly, if you're going for a cloud consultant or a technical account manager role, you might get a generic question saying, there's a business statement of the customer, how do you architect it, how do you implement it, and all of that. The expectation is you should be able to talk in terms of GCP, in terms of Google Cloud Platform, right? So it may not be a one-to-one mapping of the services. That's still fine. But at least you should have some basic understanding of Google Cloud Platform, what are the products, how they
Okay.
integrate with each other, and things like that. So that's
So sorry, I had one more question. So like, will it be like beginner level or it'll be like intermediate? So they expect you to know beginner level stuff, right? I mean,
they would expect you to know intermediate level stuff for the technology itself.
okay.
For the platform, if it is beginner level, it's still fine. I mean, you could always say, hey, I have 5 years of experience with cloud, but probably not a lot of experience with Google Cloud. That is still fine, but you should be able to, when it comes to core cloud technologies, you should be able to crack intermediate level questions.
Got it. Okay. And that's the second
So
round, the
let's
technical.
come up there. Right. So that's the first round. The second round is sort of a mix of technical and managerial. So there would be technical questions, there would be business questions. You would be tested on your ability to communicate solutions, your ability to clearly communicate your thought process, and all of those things, while the use cases still remain technical. And the last round is what we call the leadership round, which is where you're completely tested on your soft skills. So how good a communicator you are, how good an influencer you are, how good what are your situational leadership skills look like, what kind of problem solving skills you have. So it will be tested on these soft skills. So these are essentially three. There could be a fourth round in some cases, which is a case study round, which happens usually after the first round, where you are given a case study and you are expected to design a solution for that case study.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for all the information. I'm sure this is very, very helpful. Um, so the next question would be, are there any courses, books, or resources that were instrumental in your TAM role? Like, do you recommend, since you mentioned we just spoke about the interview process, do you recommend someone doing the GCP certification before even trying for the interview, applying for this role?
It is not a mandatory requirement, to be honest. I hardly see any job postings in Google where it says GCP certification is mandatory. But it is always a good to have. And there are two reasons why it is good to have. Apart from the fact that obviously you have credentials to show on your resume. One, if like even if you don't have a certification, even if you just go through that process, you understand the Google Cloud platform, which is the core platform that you're going to work on once you join Google as a technical account manager or as a cloud consultant in any of the role. You understand that platform really well. So you understand what are the products, how the products work with each other, what product does what's the USP of each of the product, what's the difference between Cloud SQL and a Cloud Spanner, for example, right? Or what's the difference between BigQuery and Bigtable, right? So one is that it gives you an in-depth understanding of the products, the platform, and that itself helps you add a lot of brownie points in the interview, because then you're not talking about, hey, okay, probably I'll deploy it in Kubernetes. You're saying, okay, probably we'll go ahead and deploy it in Google Kubernetes, right? So that difference in your answer comes in. The second aspect to that, it is certifications definitely help you go a niche above than others. Again, being very conscious of this, but this is Google, and any position that is open, there might be a plethora of candidates who are applying for that position. What makes you set apart? More or less, all of them would have come from the same technical background, the same kind of work profile. Some may be in a larger company, some may be in a smaller company, but more or less they would have all done the same kind of work that is required, which is the mandatory job requirement. So everybody is checking that checklist. What are those additional pointers that you're checking out? So certification could be one. Okay, I have Google Cloud certification. That takes you a niche above. Practical experience with GCP could be another, right? And you will always talk about, hey, I have done things on GCP, I have worked on GCP. I understand the platform. You may not be an expert, that's still fine, right? But you understand the platform. You have at least basic to intermediate level of understanding of how things work. So that's where also the certificate, when you go through the certification journey, you would also do a lot of labs. You will also do a lot of hands-on practice sessions, exercises, and all of that gives you that practical experience of GCP, which even if you don't have it from your job, you can still gain.
Sounds good. So actually, like, I was reached out like long ago for the Google Cloud consultant role, and like as per what the recruiter actually told me was like, I mean, as far as I know as well, that Google interview process is like very lengthy, and then they give you a lot of resources and links before every round. Like technical round, they'll give you enough links to like go through and prepare yourself before you answer the interview. They kind of prepare you before you even join the role. Is that true? Like,
That is true. So usually what happens is after your recruiter shortlisting is done, you would go through something called an interview cohort, where you'll have Google recruiters walking you through each round, talking about what are the competencies which will be tested in each round, what are the matrices that the interviewers are looking for, what are some of the resources publicly available that you can probably follow. There are a few standard things, like there's a star method of answering a question, or thinking about problem, causality, causation, those kind of things, right? So when I mean, none of those things are something which are very confidential to Google. All of these resources are publicly available, but what it helps is it kind of gives you a path forward. Because in today's day and age, when you talk about publicly available information, also there is so much information, right? To filter out what's beneficial and what's not is another difficult thing. So that kind of support is available when you're interviewing for any role in Google, where they um, walk you
So
through this process. They'll give you resources. They'll help you prepare for the interview and all of that.
So, like as a TAM, like since I'm a TAM interview, I'm just giving you an example. Like if somebody from a TAM role is moving into a TAM role in Google, do they have to like do any preparations or just go in and like they'll already provide these resources, right, to prepare yourself with technical from technical perspective? Do you suggest that, or do you suggest that they should spend some time before they even come for the interview or apply for the role? What do you suggest?
I would definitely suggest they should spend some time before they come for the interview, or probably even apply for the role. Uh, there are few things which I feel everybody should look at. One is the resume. Right? Um, are you mapping to the mandatory requirements? Go through the job description, go through what are the mandatory requirements of the job description. Uh, are those keywords there in your resume? Are you mapping through it? Are you able to justify through your experience that you check all the boxes? That's one thing that people should definitely do. Another thing that people should definitely do is probably reach out to people in LinkedIn, talk to them about their experience as a TAM. This video itself could be a great resource to understand what a TAM role entails, what is expected from you to do all of that. So these kind of preparation, I think, is not just for Google. If you're applying for any Fang Mang company for that matter, this kind of preparations is an absolute must-have. And this is to top it up with whatever your technical core skill set is. Right? So if you're an expert in app mod, you obviously need to brush up on that. If you're an expert in databases, you need to
Yes.
brush up on that.
Yes, absolutely right. Like I think if you have a better idea of what the role entails, that kind of helps you prepare for your interview as well. So yeah, that very well put together. Thank you, Pratish. What advice would you give someone in a technical role considering to switch to a TAM role? I think we've kind of covered, but do you want to like summarize it? Anything that we have missed, maybe?
I think I know this might sound a little generic, but I will keep it. Start by answering why you want to do it. Why do you want to become a technical account manager? Um, and I think that is irrelevant of whether you get into Google or any other company for that matter. I think the first part that anybody should try and answer is the why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you feel this? Like the first question you asked, why do you think this was a good career fit for you? Because if it is not fitting your requirements, just for the sake that the role is open, you might go through the process, you might get in also, but you'll not enjoy doing that thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh, you may not be able to stick to it for a very long time, right? So one thing is, definitely sit down, write down your whys of why you want to do it. The next question that you probably would want to answer is why Google, and why do you want to join Google apart from the Jing Bang, right? Apart from the name and the brand, what is your biggest motivation to get into Google? What is it that you can bring to the table that will make Google a better place? So those are the two questions which I think um, anyone who's there in the technical role trying to switch to TAM. The first one is a must-have. The second one is, of course, it depends whether you wanted to go for Google. My thought process is not Google. I'll speak about Google because I work with Google. But when I answer that question, what I mean is you need to write why, whichever is the company that you're going for. Is Google, it's Google. If it is some other company, it's some other company.
Yeah, that I think that is a great advice. I completely agree with you there because like if even if I'm trying to transition to other roles, I'll usually talk to people, try to understand what they actually do in their day-to-day job. So I think that's very well put together. Um,
I think another thing is if you reach out and if you talk to a lot of Googlers on LinkedIn, you'll find them very, very open to providing mentorship. So do ask for it. Do ask them if they are available, if they can spend some time with you, to talk about the process, talk about maybe review your resume, and all of those things. But if, I mean, again, I'm not getting into referrals and all. That's one part of the story. But apart from referral, you can just even reach out to people to say, oh, I want to go for this role. Can you help me review my resume? Can you help me understand what's the best way of crafting my resume? Those kind of things. And one thing which I have found working in Google for 3 years is people are very open to having these conversations, giving this mentorship, giving this guidance to people.
Yes. I think that's absolutely true. And like it's not just for like Google, but like other companies as well. I've seen people, they're very willing and like they're willing to come forward and help you, give you insights and like guide you. So you're right. I think maybe looking out for a mentor if you want to go into a specific role in a specific company, I think that also helps. I think very well said, Pritish. I'm sure this is going to help people out there. Then the last question that I have for you is like, if you could do one thing differently in your career transition, what would that be?
That is a that's a tough question to answer. To be very honest, people ask me this question, and I have been very consistent in my answer that there's absolutely nothing in my career that I've done that I regret. Um, I
That's
have I have taken crazy decisions in my career. Yeah, yeah. I have switched from being a trainer to being a product manager to being a marketing manager. I think I think the thing is, see, everyone's career is different. Everyone's perspective to their career is different. And one thing which I strongly feel from the bottom of my heart is at no point in time you should regret a decision that you've taken in your career, because um, one thing which I fundamentally believe you is that you always had the choice. You weighed in your options, and this is the option that you decided to go with. Whatever comes next, good or bad, is what you signed up for,
okay.
right? Um, so, is there something I could have done differently during my career transition? Um, I don't think so. I mean, on a funnier note, maybe negotiate a better salary package, but other than that, no,
Yeah.
nothing.
So actually, that was interesting. Yeah, I actually completely forgot to ask you about that. Like, since you mentioned you being a trainer, then a marketing role, and then you got into Google into a cloud consultant. Like the transition from marketing to cloud consultant, do you want to say anything? Like, how difficult was that? And like, um, were there any learnings? Like getting into like from marketing to like cloud consultant, which is a very technical role. Um, how was that?
So this is an interesting story. I was working with a startup as a product manager, and I was sort of managing both the portfolios while I was managing the technical product management. We could not, at that point in time, did not or could not hire a marketing manager, so I was taking care of the marketing aspects as well. Um, for me, this transition was rather forced because the company that I was working for went bankrupt and they decided to shut shops. So all of a sudden, one fine morning, I was jobless. And talking about layoffs, right?
All right.
All of a sudden, one fine morning, the entire company was laid off, and
Gosh.
I didn't have much of a choice. I was trying to figure out what do I do next in my life, and that's when someone told me, cloud is picking up, and you come from a technical background. Why don't you pick up cloud, and start exploring, see if you can find something there. So the next 6 7 months went into learning core cloud technology. Started off with AWS, transitioned to Azure, and during that period, I think it was a period of very heavy learning, right? So whenever you're switching careers, not switching companies, switching careers, that is, going from one direction to another direction altogether, there's a very steep learning curve that comes with it. And when you sign up for it, you need to agree to the fact that you might have to end up spending hours and hours trying to learn something, getting frustrated with things not working out, and then again coming back and doing the same thing the next day. At the end of it, and there is always light at the end of the tunnel. At the end of it, what will happen is you would have added one more skill to your resume, and more importantly, you would have opened more opportunities for you.
That's absolutely true. So like I've spoken to a lot of people who have made career transitions. Like one person was like from civil background, he went to a data scientist. So I know how much of efforts and hours he has put in. Like you said, I think, I really enjoyed actually talking to you. You've given a lot of life advices as well as practical tips that a lot of people can take from it. And since we are into like the layoff era that is going on, I think your advices would definitely help people out there. I really, really appreciate Pratish you coming forward and like sharing your, career journey and giving some insights to folks. So yeah, with that said, I think we're end of the call. Is there anything last, words that you want to share or like any advice before we end the call?
So I think one thing which I would like to share, given the fact that majority of our audience are early career folks who are um, starting to build their career, um, and this is something which I have learned in the last 12 years of working. Um, it really doesn't matter where you start. It really doesn't matter what conditions, situations you were in when you started. For some people, um, and I would consciously use the word lucky enough to get into their dream company as their first job. For others, it probably did not work. But that being said, you can always make it work. Um, I manifested a job in Google back in 2016. I ended up in 2022. And it's been a consistent journey during that process. Only I know how many positions I've applied for and rejected without even a recruiter screening. So it's sometimes, again, I said it, sometimes it is disheartening, sometimes it might disappoint you, sometimes it might absolutely frustrate you to a point where you give up. But the one thing which I'll keep telling you is if you have a dream company that you want to get into, keep at it. Your career is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You have 35 years to make into your dream company. Just keep at it.
Nicely said. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks for the advice, Pritish. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right.